Welcome to episode number 4 of Uncovering Unexplained Mysteries for July 5th, 2016. I just asked Mike how he was doing.
Yeah, I'm doing good. Didn't do much for the 4th of July except just rest and listen to loud fireworks outside my window. And that's pretty much about it, really. I don't think I did anything other than that except catch up with some stuff on YouTube. Oh, and rant about Independence Day Resurgence on my YouTube channel, which is a piece of shit.
I didn't see Resurgence, but I did see your why you love the first Independence Day, and
Oh, thank you.
it was pretty compelling. I was very entertained. I was literally on Twitter unfollowing thousands of people while I was listening to your, because I realized my Twitter account was full of just shell accounts that like follow me and I'll follow you back. So I was like, yeah, I want to have real people on Twitter that I'm
I have some people follow me on Twitter, but I don't really know. It's like one of those things I don't really care. I'm like, cool, all right, you follow me on Twitter, all right.
I just don't see how people get it to be a viable, like...
Yeah, I don't know either. I have no idea. But yeah, anyway, yeah, welcome to episode 4. We have 3 more Unsolved Mystery segments for you folks. And I was thinking we'd start out with Cindy James, which was titled Scared to Death on the Bizarre Murders set. The most puzzling, like, bizarre cases I can think of. Yeah. I'm just like, I still don't know what happened. So what happened was 44-year-old Cindy James, she was found dead in front of an abandoned house somewhere in Canada. It was Vancouver, Canada. She was drugged and hogtied. Authorities believe she died of either accidental causes or she committed suicide.
Now let's review that for a second. She's found bound, her feet and hands behind her back with a black nylon stocking around her neck, and the police say it was either an accidental death or a suicide.
Yeah.
Just let that sink in for a second. Not a murder, but a suicide or an accidental death.
I know. Like, that was really puzzling. It just made me just...
That's just some foreshadowing. That's some foreshadowing about what how weird this case gets.
So before her death, she put in over 100 different reports to the police. 5 of them were for violent attacks. So, yeah, that's a lot of different reports. And apparently these reports costed the police like $500,000. To investigate all of these different reports. Her parents believe that she was murdered, and 4 months after her husband separated from her, they got divorced, Cindy started to get disturbing phone calls from some unknown person. Sometimes it was just a voice. Other instances, it was just whispering or just cold, chilling silence. Which sounds like a horror movie. It sounds like When a Stranger Calls.
Yeah, and I'd like to just add a little side note to this, like when you said that her parents believed that she was murdered, even though everyone else believed it was either, a suicide or whatever. Okay, the family members are always going to believe the best about their deceased loved one. On any of these Unsolved Mysteries segments or any murder case that you ever see, they never want to believe the worst. I just always think that's kind of... It's kind of like, and her parents think she was murdered. And it's like, well, of course they do, because they're not going to want to believe that their kid was crazy, or other murder cases where their kid did something shitty and maybe they had it coming to them or whatever. It's like the parents always want to, I think that's funny. That's just kind of like, it just shows how the parent...
It's a trope. It's an Unsolved Mysteries trope, I guess.
Yeah, the parental eternal optimism that their child is the little angel that they always believed them to be.
Yeah, so then 3 months later, the disturbances started to escalate. At night, she heard prowlers, her porch lights were smashed, and her phone lines were severed. She also started to receive bizarre cut-and-paste letters. And those really, stood out to me. They were really creepy. There was one that said, see you soon, Cindy. And there was, a picture of some woman with, it looked like something from a horror movie.
Yeah.
with like a knife to her throat or something.
Yeah, they were like little like scenes like you'd see in like an ad or something, but like yeah, it almost looked like a scene from like some kind of like a snuff film or something. The girl
Yeah,
had like, yeah, it was yeah, the notes were really creepy. They were those stereotypical like cop, cut and paste notes that you see in the movies with letters from all kinds of different fonts and sizes and
yeah.
all that, yeah.
So a local friend went to check on Cindy, and she ended finding her. She found her on the ground with a nylon tied tightly around her neck, and this became a recurring thing that would happen to her. She moved to a new house, hoping that that would stop the attacks. She even painted her car and changed her last name, and this didn't seem to stop any of these things because these attacks happened at her new home as well. And so the police questioned her, but she would not tell her whole story. She was reluctant to talk, and the police believed that this is not normal behavior of a victim, which it isn't really, if you think about it. So then Cindy told her mother that she wouldn't talk because the man who was tormenting her put a knife to her throat and said, "If you talk, your sister will be next. And then your mother. Just keep quiet.
Which right
Don't tell anything."
right there, that doesn't make sense because
No, it doesn't.
usually these kind of people, if they're going to go out and stalk you and harass you, they're going to say, if you go to the police, I will kill your family.
Yeah,
They don't say, oh, you can go to the police and that's fine, just don't tell them anything. No, no.
yeah, yeah,
They don't say that. They go, if you even go to the police, your family's dead.
yeah,
So the fact that she was saying, oh, if I tell you guys what's happening, he'll kill my family. But just the fact that she was there in the police station, if the guy was serious guy or girl, I guess,
yeah,
then that should have been enough to trigger whatever he was going to do anyway.
yeah, exactly.
But it wasn't. So
No, I guess not.
kind of sketchy.
Yeah, it is. So then Cindy ended up hiring a private investigator, and he ended up hearing some strange sounds coming from a two-way radio that Cindy gave him. And he went straight to her house, and he found Cindy lying on the floor in the living room, and a note was pinned with a knife through her hand. And I'm just thinking about this as like, I mean, if she did do all this herself, like that's a lot of work. There's a
Right.
lot of shit to put yourself through.
The knife was pinned through her hand, meaning it penetrated the both inside or the outside of the hand. It went through the hand into the floor. So, I mean, when the body was autopsied, and this is kind of jumping ahead, but just to
Yeah,
make the point I'm trying to make now, when the body was autopsied, they found lethal dosage of morphine and other drugs in her. So
yeah,
perhaps because she would have these fainting, that like anytime they question her about it, she'd always say, "Oh, I don't remember what happened." Maybe she was drugging herself. When it kicked in, she was, high out of her mind where she wasn't feeling any pain, and that's what gave her the ability to stab a knife
yeah.
through her hand or something like that.
That's a possibility. Yeah. So yeah, $1.5 million was invested in investigating these cases. No evidence was found. There were no eyewitnesses. I mean, if there's 100 different incidents, you would think there would be at least one eyewitness. And only Cindy was the person that saw these things, according to Neil Hall, that is. And he was a fun character, in this
I loved that
segment.
guy. Yeah,
Yeah,
he was the reporter or journalist investigating the
or
case.
like the Vancouver Sun or something.
Yeah,
And
I don't know why I liked that guy so much, but he seemed very Marty McFly-ish to me.
he reminded me of Jim Carrey. That's who he reminded me of, because Jim Carrey is also a Canadian, I believe.
Yeah, he is.
So it's that same sort of Jim Carrey Canadian sort of, attitude, or somebody from like Kids in the Hall.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
I could see the Kids in the Hall comparison. But he was a little bit snarky. I guess maybe that's why
yeah,
I liked him because
yeah.
you don't normally see those kind of personalities on Unsolved Mysteries. Now this guy at
No,
one point was saying, like, because there was a point where Cindy started spending the night with her friend, which you didn't mention earlier, but her friend's name is Agnes Woodcock, and if that's
yeah,
not the most amazing name I've ever heard, I don't know what is, but she was spending several times. She would spend the night with Agnes Woodcock and her husband Tom, and
Yeah.
one night Cindy woke them up well after midnight, and she said she heard a noise and went downstairs. She got Agnes and Tom to come with her, and when they opened the basement, they saw that it was filled with flames. And when they went to go call for help, the phone was dead. Then the husband Tom goes outside to try to get the neighbors to call 911, and he sees a man standing there on the curb, and then the man ran away.
Yeah.
Again, police suspected that she staged the incident. And then it cuts back to this journalist who's investigating it, and he's talking about there are no fingers on the outside of the windowsill.
Yeah, no fingerprints.
She said
no dust.
she said she was out walking her dog late at night. Now, if someone was being attacked, why would they go out and walk their dog at 3 a.m. in the morning? Does that make sense? And it's just how he was like saying
Yeah,
it was just
it was totally. I totally agree with him though. But the guy could have been wearing gloves for one, so that might be the reason why there's no fingerprints. But I didn't mention that because that was later. But actually, yeah, I agree with him though. If you're worried about getting attacked, why would you walk your dog at 3 a.m. alone? It does sound kind of crazy to me. So, but yeah, and even more crazy is that she kept receiving these phone calls for months later after all this stuff. And but she was under surveillance for 24 hours from time to time with 14 officers, like 14 different police officers. And when this was occurring, nothing happened. But when surveillance was taken off, the threatening phone calls and incidents started to show up again, which that really does make that does bring I don't know, credence to the story that the police are trying to tell, that she was crazy and she did all this stuff herself. Because why would it stop? But then again, the parents come in and they're all like, well, it stopped because why would the killer doesn't, or the person who's harassing her, why would he do it when the police are there? Which is
yeah.
understandable.
Yeah, and I mean, we don't know what kind of surveillance this is. I mean, is this a
Yeah,
patrol? Is this a patrol car in front of the house? You know, I mean,
yeah.
this is a suburban neighborhood. They can't exactly hide out in hills and look at our house with binoculars.
No, it's not a stakeout.
Right. So I
So
mean,
yeah,
if I'm wanting to harass someone, if me Josh is wanting to harass Mike, you know, outside of his house, and he lives in a suburban neighborhood, and I see a fucking if I see any other cars there besides her, I would be more reluctant and you know unwilling to.
yeah.
I'm gonna wait till they go away and keep fucking with you after that.
December 11th, 1985, she was found dazed and semi-conscious in a ditch, suffering from a form of hypothermia. She was wearing a man's work boot and glove. The same black nylon stocking was tied tightly around her neck. Once again, she had no memory of the attack. Which that does kind of lead, okay, she has no memory of this, so that kind of does, oh, did she drug herself? Because that would make sense that you would have no memory of this stuff if you drugged yourself.
And when it comes to talking to the police, and as far as legally speaking, saying you have no recollection is a valid way of pretty much pleading the fifth. It's a valid way of not divulging too much information that you
Yeah,
don't want to divulge. So
yeah,
a lot of times on these shows that I watch, people will say they don't remember just to get the cops, you know, away from that line of questioning, you know.
mm,
They might know good and well what happened, but they can just as easily say, "Oh, I don't recall," or I don't remember."
yeah,
So, you know, who's to say that she legitimately? Because, you know, to me, like, I mean, my memory isn't the best in the world, but if some crazy shit's happening, I mean, the brain tends to grab on to really
yeah.
traumatic things that happen and won't let go. I mean,
Sometimes, though, these traumatic events do cause, bouts of amnesia. So there is that kind of thing as well.
sometimes, but when you're hurt, but when you have five incidences and you're constantly being
Yeah,
harassed, I mean, it seems like at one of those times you'd be like, yeah, you know, I can give you a artist
yeah,
rendition, or I can tell the sketch artist what this guy, you know, something.
Yeah,
but
but she doesn't. So then that kind of makes you feel like, well, maybe she is just tormenting herself, which is honestly pretty sad if that is the case. She was admitted to a mental hospital after, all this stuff started to go, sour, started to go even crazier. And the doctor feared that she was becoming suicidal. He believed her tales of being attacked, but he also felt the worst thing for her was the fact that no one believed her. And think about that. If this actually was happening to her, or if you put yourself in her shoes and then nobody believes you, that would be very depressing. That really would.
I feel like if it was happening to me and it was legitimate, there are 101 different courses of action you can take, and it just seems like she didn't take any of those courses of
Yeah,
action that she could have
yeah,
taken.
exactly.
It's almost like she bared this burden of, oh no, it has to play out the way that it's playing out, and I'm not gonna try. See, that's one thing that annoys me about other people is like, when they're going through something and they're not, and you try to give them suggestions, you try to give them advice, and they go, no, no, I like people who are like depressed or whatever. Well, why don't you try
Yeah,
this? Why don't you try that? No, no, no. I'd rather just, wallow in my pit. And it's like, well, if you're not willing to try anything, then you can't really expect to any different results.
yeah,
And that seems to be the case with her. She just, you know, if this was let's just come from the angle that there was somebody legitimately harassing her. Why wouldn't you switch it up? Because I mean, this happened to her for years.
yeah.
Years. Who would want to
Like
live their
six
life?
years.
Who would want to live
Yeah.
their life that way? I mean,
Constantly terrorized. Yeah.
after the first 6 months, I would be like, I'm getting a gun, I'm getting pepper spray, I'm going fucking Home Alone on this motherfucker. I'm setting up traps. I'm setting up, you know, I'd go Macaulay Culkin on them and
Yeah.
lure them in and set up all kinds of cartoony traps and hilarious situations. I'd sell the rights to Hollywood. Oh wait, I'm getting a little carried away. But no, I mean, I would, I would try something different, or at the very fucking least, if it's happening for years on end, I'd move back in with my parents or move in with
Yeah.
somebody else and stay there permanently. And at least, if she is mentally unstable, then they would be able to witness that and observe that.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, on so then she was released and from the hospital, and she told her parents that she thinks she knows who the person is that is tormenting her. But she says that the police can't solve the case, she will. I guess 6 years later, I guess finally she's like, I'm gonna do something about this. And she says, when it's all over, I will explain everything to you, but I can't tell you now.
How ominous.
Yeah, and then on May 25th, 1989, 6 years after the first troubling phone call, she disappeared. The same day, her car was found in a nearby neighborhood parking lot. Inside were groceries and a wrapped gift. Blood was found on the driver's side door, and items from Cindy's wallet were under the car. And 2 weeks later, her body was found at the abandoned house.
And it,
Cindy James's death had all the earmarks of a sadistic murder. Her hands and feet were bound together behind her back. A black nylon stocking was tied tightly around her neck, but an autopsy revealed that she had died from a large amount of morphine and other drugs.
so when the cops show up, it has all the earmarks of a sadistic murder, yet the cause of death was a drug overdose.
Yeah,
Obviously, if you're harassing someone and you want to kill them, and you are sadistic, which the stalking around the neck and all this other kind of stuff shows signs of sadism, if that's the form. Yeah,
sadism.
yeah.
Sadism.
There you go. Because the Boston Strangler, he had a bunch of these
Yeah,
kind of
that's what it
earmarks,
reminded me of is the Boston Strangler case.
right?
It
So,
definitely had this sort of serial killer vibe.
but how they would always finish the job was they were out for blood, and most of the times these people are. I mean, there would have been why were there cuts and abrasions the first time and all these other times, and the
Yeah,
paring knife through the hand? It's almost like this guy switched up his mo. You know, like
Which doesn't make any sense when it comes to these type of killers. They usually just they keep the same MO.
right. And so all of a sudden at the end, there's no wounds on her whatsoever, and he
Yeah.
decides to drug her.
Yeah, that's the thing. The drugging her thing, when you think about it, is kind of like, why would he do that? Wouldn't he want her to suffer? You know, if he's this type of sadistic
And
killer.
that brings up another point. ODing from morphine is not a bad way to go. If you're gonna kill yourself in any way, ODing from morphine is what hospice does all the time. I mean, they don't overdose them, but I mean, sometimes they do. Sometimes they give them an amount of morphine that's going to take them out, and that is a very pleasant way to go. I mean, it's one of the more powerful painkillers out there. You pretty much just fall asleep. So
Yeah.
why would this guy, and two, not even acknowledging the fact it's not easy to make somebody take something, I mean, unless he injected her with it, which I don't believe they said that in the segment. I think she ingested it because,
Yeah.
yeah, and in fact, I know she would have had to have ingested it, because if he had injected it into her, it would have taken effect almost immediately. But the fact is that they said,
Yeah.
you know,
15 minutes to an hour. They said takes 15 minutes an hour to take an effect.
right. So
On
she
her.
ingested it orally, and to try to, even if someone's tied up, to try to get them to ingest something, without them spitting it back out. I mean, that's difficult right there. So, I mean, it's weird, it's like
Yeah.
I at first going into this, I tried to keep an open mind of like, I really didn't know exactly what happened, but the more I think about it out loud, the more I'm like, you know what? This really does kind of sound like a suicide.
Yeah. Yeah. A knot specialist. He tied the same knots that were found on Cindy. Cindy, I can't say her damn name for some reason. On Cindy in 3 minutes. So he was able to do the same knots while in 3 minutes. So conceivably, this is possible, even after ingesting the morphine. So the police believe Cindy James committed suicide in elaborate fashion, but her parents believe someone is getting away with murder.
So now, if we're taking the suicide route, you got to think, okay, well, the first thought is schizophrenia. She's having
Yeah.
hallucinations. She's paranoid, schizophrenic,
Mm.
delusions of grandeur, all the checklists of a typical schizophrenic.
She was a nurse, though. So
Right.
that's what's interesting.
She was a
Is this,
nurse. She was able to function
yeah.
normal in every other way seemingly, except for this one aspect. In normal schizophrenics, they can't. They every
No.
single day they're having hallucinations, and it interferes with their life to the point to where they either have to get on some medication or they get committed. So, but she wasn't doing that. It's only like, with schizophrenia, you can't just manufacture one specific hallucination. I mean, it could be anything,
Yeah.
and it just gets worse. But she, like, her only, I guess, hallucination, if you want to call it that, would be this person attacking her, and that just doesn't stack up. So
No.
the only other conclusion would be that she was knowingly and very sanely staging this herself,
Yeah.
which makes it
But
even more bizarre.
yeah, it does. Like you were like, why would any sane person do this to themselves?
Now, I
It,
mean, we do have precedents, like Munchausen syndrome, where the mother, makes a child sick to bring attention to herself, or
yeah.
things like this, are in the psychology, whatever, the psychology
So she
dictionary,
could have been doing this to bring attention to herself.
which she was doing,
Yeah,
and there are people out
definitely.
there who will call 911 at the slightest, disturbance, just because they want the attention out there. And she was single, and she was in her 40s, um and funny enough, they never mentioned the ex-husband as a suspect or anything
Yeah.
like that. So obviously he wasn't, maybe this was some way to get his attention. They didn't really explore that angle very much.
Yeah.
And I know this.
I think there's more about this case because I remember reading in some message boards that there's just like a whole book I think that's like about this particular case. I think that like has even more information and even more bizarre type of stuff. But Unsolved Mysteries only had like a certain amount of time. to cover this case.
Oh,
So, yeah, I don't know exactly. I think it's on like the Unsolved Mysteries message boards and stuff like that. I remember reading about it, and they were saying like, yeah, there's like even more crazy stuff that with this particular case. It's honestly, if there's any truth to this, to her attacker, it's terrifying to anybody to think that there's somebody who's so sadistic that they would just keep on just tormenting somebody, but not to the point where they're going to kill them. They just keep on with these phone calls, these disturbing notes, and then eventually, like 6 years later, they finally kill you. Like that's terrifying. But at the same time, it's not very realistic. So that's one of the things that really just is very puzzling about this particular case. There are some things that might point to murder. There's other things that point to suicide, and I could see why the police lean towards suicide. But there's all other things that just I don't know. Like after this segment is over, I'm just still left scratching my head, being like, I don't know. I really don't know for sure. At least for me personally, I don't know. There's not enough there for me to be like, yeah, definitely 100% suicide or 100% murder.
yeah, it's really a toss up because, if she was this kind of person with this kind of personality of needing attention, you'd think the parents would have seen it earlier in her life, or she would have displayed
Yeah,
these kind of traits early in her life. And because family members, your kids, and if your kid is doing, oh well, Cindy always had a flair for the dramatic and all that, but they never said
yeah.
any of that. They painted her to be a very sane, reasonable person. So again, it's kind of like, well, I don't know, maybe there is some more to this. I mean,
Think about the blood found on the driver's side door. Like, did they even test whose blood that was? Was it Cindy's? Like, I mean, we didn't really know for sure.
and the
I don't think
guy, the guy who, when Tom Woodcock stepped out of his house and called to the guy standing out in front of the yard when the house is burning down, the
Yeah,
guy runs away. What was that about?
exactly. Why would you
Damn.
run away? I mean, what's the reason to run away? If somebody say, "Help, we got fire," you know, I don't know. The only reason why the guy would run away is, I would think, is because he might have set the fire. I don't know, or is just afraid of fire. I no
If
idea.
you have any information regarding the Cindy James case, please write to Unsolved Mysteries, P.O. Box 1104. My ass.
I guess you don't remember the PO box number.
No, but it would be badass me as a fan if I memorize that whole ending little
Yeah.
deposition there.
You can't send it to the PO box anyway because it wouldn't go to Unsolved Mysteries. I don't know who has that PO box
It
now.
just goes through a tube that comes out of the side of a mountain overlooking an ocean, and it just goes straight into the ocean now.
So yeah, this is a case that I definitely thought was interesting and intriguing because of all the different aspects of it and the whole sort of suicide thing that the police believe, and there is some possibility to it. But yeah, it's definitely a case that I'm just like, I don't know. And there's a reason why it was on Unsolved Mysteries, because as far as I'm concerned, it's an unexplained death.
Yeah, I mean, if you have any chance to go out and watch this segment, I highly recommend it. This is one of the better ones from the show. I will say that's one of the things with the Ultimate Collection. They got a lot of segments right on there. I mean, they really did handpick some of the better ones, and this is
Yeah,
one that's on there. And it's always been one of my favorites. That's why I'm glad you selected it because I mean, I
it's like a movie script. It really
yeah,
is.
yeah.
It sounds like something you would see in like a horror film or a TV movie of the week or something.
All right, do we have any more meat to throw on this one, or can we go to our
Not
next?
really. I think we're good. I was thinking the next one I have here is the Texas UFO.
Texas
Uh,
UFO. Everything's bigger in Texas.
Apparently so, and so is radiation, radiation poisoning. This on December 29th of 1980, on a road on the outskirts of Houston, Texas, Betty Cash, Vicky Landrum, and Vicky's grandson Colby were returning home from dinner. Around 9 p.m., they saw a bright light in the sky. They said that you could see it through the trees, and they traveled for about close to a mile, and it kept getting closer and closer as they went along. And then they started to feel this intense heat. Then Vicky told Betty to stop the car. They abruptly stopped the car, and the heat was so intense that Vicky's handprint was embedded into the front dash of the car. Like that really stood out to me. I was like,
Yeah.
damn, that's really hot. So Betty then decided she needed to see what the object was for herself. And the object was floating near the car. And she describes it as a diamond shaped object with 4 points. The one at the top was rounded, and so were the sides. And at the bottom, flames were shooting out. And the effect in this particular segment, it's not, it's kind of dated, but it's not the worst thing ever. I'll take this over an Asylum movie visual effect any day of the week. Those Sci-Fi Channel movies
Yeah.
like Gatoroid or what, Mega Shark versus Gatoroid or whatever. Um, but yeah, Betty says that the heat was tremendous. She felt like she was burning from the inside out, and she was justifiably horrified. She was afraid to even move. And when she reached for the door handle, it was so hot that she could not even hold on to it. And then the object started to move away. And then when you think things, would just stop being crazy, it gets even crazier. Because just moments later, a large squadron of helicopters descended on the area. They counted about 23 large helicopters with double rotors, and they believed that they had to belong to the Army.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I just think it's hilarious to think like the U.S. government. It's like those crazy UFOs. They've gotten out again, and it's like they just fly
Yeah,
around and run amok, and then you see all these helicopters like get back here, you little bastard. Like
yeah,
all these like air like helicopters flying by. It's like there's some shit going down when unmarked helicopters,
yeah.
black
It's not just one; it's 23.
Yeah, that's some hey, get the fuck back here kind of actions by the US government, because that's that's definitely not a walk in the, when a fucking felon escapes or they're on the search for a guy, there's like one helicopter.
Yeah.
Not 23 of them.
So, and with the 23 helicopters, I also think that's an indication that I don't think this is of the U.S. government. If this object was of U.S. government origin, why the hell would 23 helicopters be chasing after it?
I don't know. It could be one of those things like if it like okay, going back to gleaming technology from the UFOs. Like let's say that this is a test craft gleamed
Yeah,
from UFO technology. It could have been those helicopters could have been there for damage control, or they could have been there. There could have been all kinds of
yeah, but that's
machines.
that's that's a lot of helicopters for
That is a
something
shit
like
ton of
that.
helicopters. That is.
I mean, one or two I could see for damage control. 23?
Well, see,
So,
that's the interesting thing about all these UFO stories. Anytime you hear a UFO story, one thing that I have noticed is that almost every time you hear a story, the craft itself always differs.
yeah,
Like here we have something that looks basically like an acorn almost, but
yeah,
more squared off, just to give people a mental
uh-huh.
visualization of what this thing looks like. It's appeared to be all black, and you had helicopters chasing after it. Now, most other cases of UFOs, again, I'm referencing the Belgian UFO case. There's a case where they got in fighter jets and they chased after this UFO, and it was ascending and descending at rates
Yeah.
that were so fast it would have killed a normal human being. So it was clear that these UFOs, if they don't want to be caught, they won't be, and they can easily escape. So the fact that they chose to use helicopters to pursue this thing instead of a faster craft like a fighter jet or something also says something too.
Well, didn't the Belgian UFO case happen later? This is like in 1980, I believe.
Yeah, but
So
didn't they have like
I think maybe they were only used what they had. Like it was the local Air Force base. I don't. They might have just had helicopters at the time.
Hmm.
or maybe the other planes were out doing whatever, or maybe they thought like 23. How they thought, well, we got 23 now. You think at least one of them is gonna, you know, catch up to it or something. That is an interesting point. Maybe they could have used fighter jets, but
My whole thing is if the UFO wanted to evade them, it could have because
I think it did. I don't think they caught whatever it was. It didn't. It doesn't appear that they caught it.
well, yeah, they didn't, but like it's like usually these UFOs just like blink out and then they are just
Well,
gone
maybe
or
that's one particular type of. Maybe there's different types of
oh
UFOs.
no, they're yeah, that's what I'm saying.
So there might be one that that are more. There might be more UFOs that are advanced than other ones, and then there's ones that aren't as advanced.
All I know is something that is propelled from the bottom that can somehow fly in multiple directions. You know,
It's not a weather balloon.
yeah, yeah, it's not a weather balloon. I don't know if we have anything like that. I'm trying to think because a
We
helicopter,
could, but it's just we don't know anything about it. The public doesn't know anything about it, so that
right?
could.
But the second thing I'm thinking about is like, even if we did have anything like that, do you get radiation burns from
Yeah, see,
it?
that's the other thing because that's the one. That's the other thing that really, really just sticks out to you when you see this segment. Because afterwards, they started to experience mysterious illnesses whose symptoms began to appear just 6 hours after this bizarre encounter. At 1 a.m., Colby woke up crying and asking for water. He had a high fever and was vomiting. His grandmother, Vicky, got sick right after tending to Colby. And both Vicky and Colby were dealing with the fever and what looked like severe sunburns. And Vicky was justifiably concerned about Betty because she was there with them. And so she went to Betty's house to check on her health, and she was shocked by what she saw. Betty's temperature was dangerously high, and large red welts had appeared on her face and hands. And the makeup effects artists, they did a pretty good job here in this segment showing, their sunburns and what Betty looked like. She looked like shit. Like she
She
looked
was yeah,
terrible.
she was pretty chilling to look at when they
Yeah.
first reveal her in the bed when she turns over.
And Betty says she was so sick that all she needed was water. That's all she could think about, and her head was killing her, and she had an upset stomach. And over a period of weeks, her condition worsened. So she went to a doctor, and the doctor did some tests, and records showed that she was dealing with symptoms of acute radiation poisoning. So she then went through treatment for acute radiation poisoning 3 weeks later, and she was in the hospital for about 6 weeks. During this period of time, she lost most of her hair. And even after the treatment, Betty was still dealing with the after effects of being exposed to high amounts of radiation, like extreme swelling of her face and arms, painful headaches, and a dramatic loss of appetite.
Now
Vicky and Colby had similar symptoms, but they were not as severe as Betty's were.
you got to think Betty was the one who got out of the car.
Yeah,
She got out of the car and was standing in front of this thing, and therefore she got the brunt of the radiation poisoning.
yeah.
Colby and Vicky stayed in the car, so they had symptoms, but it wasn't nearly as bad as what Betty's were.
This kind of does tie into some of the high amounts of radiation that are found at particular places where eyewitnesses say they saw a UFO, or there's also been radiation found at crop circles and things like that. So this does kind of tie into sort of UFO sightings from people from the past and present, because there has been documented cases of finding extremely high amounts of radiation at these particular spots where people have seen UFOs. So she contacted a UFO investigator named Josh Schussner for help, and he did several interviews with her and Vicky. They then revisited a location where they saw the object, and they were able to point out exactly what they saw and where they saw it. And if they were just making it up, I think that'd be really hard to be that detailed.
Right.
So at this location, there was a burned spot on the road that indicated that it was heated due to extreme level of heating, and it was clearly visible.
Yeah, and this spot on the road that they show, now, I mean, I know that it's a recreation, but this spot that they show is like jet black,
Yeah,
and asphalt, is designed to, with withstand extreme levels of heat. I'm thinking about.
So it doesn't melt. Yeah.
Right, I'm thinking about the Florida sun. I live in Florida, and god damn, the roads have to heat up to at least 120 degrees at some
Yeah.
points, and they're fine. So I mean, this, if you can imagine an asphalt road with just this jet black patch of burn area on it, now you're starting to realize the levels of heat that they were dealing with from this craft.
And several weeks later, the burn spot was paved over. Eyewitnesses said that people brought in unmarked trucks, dug up the road, put the material in the trucks, then put a tarp over the trucks, and then drove away.
I always thought that always stuck out to me watching this segment. They literally dug up that one piece of asphalt,
Yeah.
put it on an unmarked truck, hauled it away, put in a new piece of asphalt, and all that happened within only several weeks' time. Now, I don't know how things are wherever you live, but from where I live, if there's a pothole in our road, it takes like 2 months before they'll even look at it and poke it with a
Yeah.
ruler. So,
Exactly.
so to just, swap out this one burned piece of road so quickly, that's something.
That's very telling. That definitely shows that the military knew something was going on that they wanted
They'd
to
have to,
do
because
something about.
the city would be the one commissioned to deal with it, and they'd have to go through all these other channels, and so they'd have to know about it. And obviously someone wanted that piece of road, and I mean, you could say at the very least, well, maybe it was giving off radiation, maybe it was
Yeah.
radioactive. Well, even then, that's something that the government would be responsible for, you would think, on Vicky and Betty's end, as far as they're
Yeah.
concerned.
Yeah. I understand why they're upset at the government later, but at the same time, there really isn't concrete proof that this craft is from the government. So, one of these, but there were other people who saw some of these things. The UFO investigator John, he interviewed every individual that lived at least 10 miles from the area of the sighting, and at least 10 other people saw the object, and 7 saw the helicopters. One of the people who saw the helicopters was police officer L. Walker. He was in the area at the same time when Betty and Vicky saw the object. He also saw these helicopters. And one of the helicopters sideswiped near him and blasted him in the eyes with a bright searchlight. And he could tell that they were military helicopters.
Now, this character L. Walker that they had on the show, this is just one of the classic unsolved mysteries tropes, to use a word you said earlier,
Yeah.
that we see in many unsolved mysteries. These are country folk.
Yeah.
So
Good old boys.
yeah, these are real motherfuckers. These are people that I'm not sure they would have on shows anymore, because they might feel like, oh, the young people aren't gonna want to hashtag this guy because he's not cool,
They're
you
not going to
know.
relate to him.
But
No, no more. Well, that kind of makes sense. There's not a lot of blue collar characters in movies lately. Just a lot of young, fresh faced individuals.
But
So
one
it seems
one thing
like
I love the most about this old fart that they had, that they were interviewing, this L. Walker guy, it wasn't helicopter, it was a helicopter. Like, and he didn't have like a thick, like, Texas Southern accent. He was saying everything normal. He's like, and then me and my wife saw the helicopters come over the woods, and then the
yeah.
helicopters, and I'm just like, God, I love this guy, and I love this show. I'm so glad they put this guy on. Like, that's just awesome.
To talk about his
Yeah,
helicopters.
it's helicopter.
So Betty and Vicky then wrote to Texas senators about the ill effects that the sighting has had on them and Colby, and the Air Force Base is notified. And on August 21st, Betty, Vicky, and Colby arrived at Bergstrom Air Force Base. Betty noticed a large map, and on the map, the exact spot where the incident had occurred was marked. They had brought overnight bags because they were expecting medical treatment, but instead they were interrogated by these 2 military officers for at least 2 hours. These 2 officers then denied that any military operations were conducted on the night of the sighting.
Now, there's a few things there. When they went to Bergstrom Air Force Base, they were pretty much convinced that they were going to get help, and that's the word they kept throwing around in the segment. We want help.
Yeah.
Now, what do they mean by help? They want money. They want money to pay for their medical bills and all that, which
Yeah.
is understandable because I'm sure
Mhm.
all those tests and radiation treatments aren't cheap. You could probably
No.
ask any cancer survivor or cancer patient about that. So if they wanted help from the government. They felt like they were responsible. Fair enough. I probably would have done the same thing. So these guys came to Bergstrom Air Force Base with overnight bags. Like they thought they were going to get treatment like there. They thought they'd be spending the night. They thought it was all going to get taken care of. And I like how in the segment they do mention the map. Like when they enter the room, there's a big ass map with one
Yeah.
little pin on the exact location where this event happened. Now, why would that map be in there? Why would that location be marked? Were the people just following up on the information and being like, "Oh, let's get a big ass map and put a mark on it," or would that be more telling of something else? Like, I don't know. That's kind of
That sounds like they had a discussion beforehand. Like they had people, maybe these officers were informed on what had happened, what's going on, the location and everything by other superior officers, and then they're basically telling them when these people come in, you deny that anything happened.
Or maybe there was just a really slow guy who worked for the Air Force in there named Gomer or something. He's like, what are you talking about? UFO? Yeah, the UFO, man. Oh, where is it at? Pull out the giant map. Pull out the giant map. Now, what was it again? Okay, we got to get the colored pins to put on the map so Gomer has a good visual representation. Here, is this good? Oh, now I get what you're talking about.
Uh,
That could have been a possibility too. Just
yeah,
saying.
that could be a possibility.
Oh,
That is
sorry. We
definitely
left the big map out with the pin for Gomer. He's a little slower. We needed to show him
yeah, and he's
exactly.
only here because he's the general's son or nephew. So
Yeah,
the
yeah,
fame.
trust fund baby.
So the women were then told that they were entitled to file a claim, and it would be investigated by the military. But 4 weeks later, their claim for medical damages was denied.
What a
And in
surprise!
1982, Betty and Vicky then filed a lawsuit against the United States government. The case was dismissed by a federal judge for lack of evidence, which is understandable. They don't really have any evidence. And then they seem like well-meaning people, but it seems like they're kind of naive. Like they were expecting everything was going to work out on their end and the government was going to hand them restitution or something, and that they were like, "Oh, it was in front of a federal judge." And that just convinced me that the government just is no good or stuff like that.
These people kind of hit me close to home because I'm a Southern boy. I grew up in the South my whole life. My daddy's Southern. These people remind me of my grandma and my aunt or something like that.
Yeah.
They're talking about how the judge didn't even give us a chance to present our sides of the story and what we had seen and all this other kind of stuff. And just typical, disenfranchisement with the government. Like I've lost all trust in the U.S. government. The amount of people I know around here who have all said that is just so typical. Like I don't know.
If you had a dollar or a dime for every time someone around your neighborhood said that kind of stuff, you'd probably be rich.
Just the amount of times my dad has said it. I mean, for good lord. I mean, the Southerners down here in the Bible Belt, we don't trust the government.
So exactly what did they see in the Texas sky? An experimental governmental craft? A UFO? Well, the people who did see this Texas UFO, they don't believe in little green men, so they believe that it's a governmental craft.
And that was their words, by the way. They said
Yeah,
they don't believe in. They called them little green men.
yeah, it was Vicky who was like, she says, I don't believe in little green man.
Which I bet they don't. Again, it was just like the case that we talked about. What was it last week, where these people had nothing to gain from this.
Yeah, no,
They in fact they gained something, and they gained hefty medical bills and early death
radiation
probably.
poisoning.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So they
I don't
actually
know
have
if they're
physical.
still alive. I haven't done any
Oh,
research
I
on it.
highly doubt
Yeah, I highly doubt it.
they were
Yeah.
old. They were old even during that segment. I mean, and Betty had. I think they were saying Betty had several
She was
types.
diagnosed with several types of cancer.
Yeah, several, not just one, several.
Yeah, several.
That's you're kind of fucked when that happens.
And they all had lower than normal white blood cell counts.
Which is reminiscent of like a immune
AIDS, something. Yeah.
immune deficiency disease like AIDS. Yeah, exactly. And their bodies couldn't fight off even the simplest colds.
Or minor infection. And that, yeah, Colby's probably the one that's going to have the most problems, growing up. If he even makes it, even if he lives to be that long.
If he did make it, I don't know. Like I've tried to Facebook a lot of these people, a lot of the younger people on the Unsolved Mysteries, but I'm guessing they don't really give out their last names because I've never found anybody like we haven't talked about it yet, but going into the Ghost Boy segment, I tried to Facebook that person and see if I could find him or any information on him because
Yeah.
man, what's going on? But yeah,
They're probably like, we don't want to be contacted by you, crazy Unsolved Mystery fans.
yeah, because I'm sure I'm not the first person that's tried that. Like, I don't know. I just get curious about that stuff, and I just like to be like, hey, bro, I just saw your Unsolved Mystery segment. So what's going on? Are you still seeing ghosts? Like,
You're like the fanboy,
yeah.
from Freakazoid, but for Unsolved Mysteries.
I don't
But yeah,
I don't understand the reference, but I'm gonna go with it. I mean, I know the show, but I don't.
or the comic book guy from Simpsons.
There you go.
Yeah.
I got that one. So yeah, I
So
mean,
United States,
obviously,
of course, they refused to be interviewed for this segment, and they continued to deny that there was any military operations that had occurred on that cold Texas winter night.
let's have a moment for the all the people out there going, big surprise! The government didn't want to comment.
Yeah, I think it was a UFO. That's my belief. I think it was a UFO. It could be a governmental craft. If it wasn't from the U.S. government. It might from Russia or some other country, because the U.S. government would not be sending 23 helicopters from their own government to chase after some object that was built and was flown out of one of their own hangars.
Yeah, I mean, these people had physical symptoms. You can't deny that.
Exactly.
I mean, this is unfortunate that it happened to him, but it's kind of one of those things to where it's like this is one of the better, as far as physical proof, UFO researchers and people who are trying to give credence to the UFO phenomenon, you kind of like to see when there's things like physical, manifestations of things that have happened as a
This
result of
isn't the only instance either. There's another one on the UFO box set, where
oh
this
yeah,
guy
Falcon Lake, the Falcon
smartphones.
Lake
Yeah, yeah,
UFO. Yeah, that's also a really good one to talk about, where the guy got burns in the shape of the grate that was on the UFO, and
yeah.
that's going into a whole nother thing. I mean, Jesus, all the segments that we could talk about here, but yeah, I mean, like I'm saying, I'm like going through my head thinking like, what do we have as far as a flying machine that would give you radiation poisoning? Now I'm thinking if you stood too close to a NASA rocket blasting off, well, first of all you die of a heart attack from the sonic, just the sonic
Yeah.
frequencies. But I mean, let's say there was something that was low energy enough to where it used like some kind of a propulsion system coming out the bottom of it, because traditional flight, if you want to go side to side, left and right, up and down, you have to use a more helicopter type propulsion. Jets can only really go forward as far as in turn. So I'm thinking like, what flying kind of mechanism do we even have that propels itself with that kind of method? And obviously, if this is a device that the government does own, if it's shooting radiation out everywhere as it flies, that wouldn't be sanctioned.
No, absolutely not. And they definitely would not want people to know about it. And of course, they would deny that this is of government origin.
And
But the thing is, it's the 23 helicopters. I keep going back to the 23 helicopters, which really makes me feel I don't think this is a U.S. government object or flying machine, because I don't see any reason why they would send 23 helicopters after it unless it has a mind of its own.
Yeah, it's just one of those things where it's like, you I hate that we keep coming back to this, but it's like you just don't know. I mean,
No, you don't.
you just have no
That's what's
idea, and
called the unexplained. But the radiation poisoning was a real thing that these people had to deal with, and I definitely do feel so bad, and I feel so much for them that they had to deal with that. I mean, it's scary enough to see something like this, let alone deal with severe radiation poisoning.
yeah, the whole UFO craft thing has always been fascinating to me because there are just so many different crafts from all the stories that we hear.
But if I'm gonna see one, I mean, it'd be kind of cool to see one, but I don't want to see one if it's gonna give me radiation poisoning.
Well, they all have some form, it seems, they all have some form of something that our human bodies don't like.
Yeah,
Because anytime anyone's ever tried to fuck around with one, it always ends badly. So obviously, the kind of propulsion systems they have are just something that human beings aren't designed to be able to handle.
yeah,
I mean,
which makes sense.
if you can't even get in the vicinity of the thing without getting these horrible, radiation type, like poisoning.
Symptoms,
I
yeah.
mean, like that's crazy, I mean, that's
It is.
obvious. I mean, just the legal red tape and the litigation from, if the government did have something like this, we don't even the US government doesn't even allow like the smallest kind of I mean, you always hear with rice they allow a certain amount of rat feces in it, per
Mhm.
whatever, and there's certain things that, but there's also, with the FDA and all this other kind of stuff. There's so much regulations to so many things, and it's for the sake of public safety, and it's for the sake of they want to avoid, the courts because people will sue. And if this was a government craft and it was shooting out radiation, I mean, you saw what happened with Chernobyl and
Yeah,
5 Mile or 3 Mile Island and NLO. Like these factories, when they release radioactivity, it's all up in the papers and it gets all this negative publicity. So, they don't want this craft running around that's like radioactive and giving people cancer. That would be a legal nightmare for them. So, of course, I don't think it's one of ours. The only other question, if we're talking about being an earthly craft, is if it's somebody else's. Now
yeah.
that's a
We
question
don't know.
that could be asked. It could be some kind of
Like I was saying, Russian.
Russian, Chinese, some kind of
Yeah,
something that
maybe they a UFO crashed over there somewhere, and then they incorporated some alien technology into some craft, and then flew it over. But Texas, really, some place in like the middle of nowhere, Texas. That's the other thing. It's like it was like on some road somewhere, some country road in Texas, in Houston.
well, who
Like,
knows
what
where
kind of spying are they going to find there?
who knows where it was coming from and who knows where it was going. I mean,
Yeah, there's that too.
obviously
That's why they call
obviously when they intercepted it, that was just it was passing through.
that's why they call it the unknown and the unexplained. The next one, this one terrified me the first time I saw it, and I had never seen this live. The first time I saw the segment, the Ghost Boy segment, was on the Ghosts set, and I'd never heard of it until then. And it was like the first time. I remember the first time I saw this quite vividly, and I didn't see it when I was like a kid or anything. I saw it when I was like an adult, and it scared the shit out of me as an adult.
Yeah, same
It's
here.
just it's just the whole Ghost Boy concept, the whole thing that what he's dealing with is just terrifying to me. The idea that this door to the paranormal is always open when you're around and you're alive and you're still breathing is just terrifying. It's kind of like Constantine, the movie Constantine and the comic and the TV show, where he kind of has the door open, but like this is like really bad. So yeah, this is the Jones family who they had no warning of these ghostly incidents that they claim had occurred. And Denise, there's the mother, Denise Jones. There's also the stepfather. I forgot his name, but it's her son, Michael, who is dealing with all of these supernatural occurrences, these terrifying, horrifying supernatural occurrences. She's says, introduces with her saying that she heard her son scream and then she saw him curled up in his bed. And Michael says that he saw an old man. He said he was white, cloudy, and he smiled at him. And Michael says that it was a ghost. He even says that the ghost said that he was a ghost as well, which is kind of, I don't know, like really? Like, would a ghost really be like, yeah, and by the way, I am a ghost?
Yeah, the ghost, like I'm sure the ghost would be more like, ugh, ghost, that is such an archaic term and we find it offensive. We are living impaired.
So he was only 5 years old when he saw his first ghost, and Michael says he has continued to see ghosts ever since. He then saw this man again in the kitchen, and he then later saw a picture of the old man that he'd been seeing as a ghost, and that man was his great-grandfather. He had never met him before, never heard of him, never seen this picture before, and this his great-grandfather had been dead for 17 years.
Which we have seen this, the examples of this in many cases before. Especially kids seem to be more attuned to this
Yeah.
kind of energy than adults. There's many other cases where there's a point where the family just happens to be going through a family photo album, and there'll be a great great grandfather in there, and the kid will point to it and go, "That's the man I've been seeing." And it's like, well, that man's been dead for like 50 years. That's not
Yeah.
possible.
That's always stuff that makes your hair stand up because you're like, how?
And I would think it would be the reaction too of the kid, like, "Oh my God, that's him." It's like that's something that you
Yeah.
can't really fake. I mean, you can
No.
fake it, but you got to really be going for attention whore. If you're going out of your way to just pick a random person and be like, "Oh, that's the man I've been seeing." Like kids usually aren't clever enough to,
They're not that good of actors either.
yeah,
So,
to devise something. Like
so if this wasn't creepy enough for Michael, his grandfather says that he believes evil spirits are in his house, and he says that they want him on his side, and that there are a lot of ghosts in this house that are after him. There are a lot of good ones and bad ones, and they're both fighting over Michael. That like really, first time I heard that, that just like made just sent a chill right down my spine, because just the idea that there's this struggle, like, oh, by the way, there's all different types of ghosts. There's good ghosts, but there's also really bad ones, and they're both fighting over you, by the way.
it's like the movie Ghost, where
Yeah,
what's his face dies and becomes the protecting ghost, but then you got all these other scary shadowy ones.
yeah. So Michael's parents believed that the spirits were multiplying, so they contacted a paranormal investigator and researched the case named John Zaffis. Now, Zaffis is a 26-year vet paranormal investigating. He did not find anything physically or mentally wrong with Michael or his family. Michael was submitted to numerous psychological and medical evaluations, and the physicians found nothing medically wrong with Michael. Psychological evaluations provided the same results. So I know a lot of people usually point out stuff like this when these cases happen. Oh, they're crazy, or there's this, or they're whatever. Well, they did all these tests and they didn't find anything. So you can't really say that that is what it was.
Which is honestly, I mean, that's honestly like textbook paranormal ghost hunting
Yeah.
101. You always rule out the variables, like you rule out I mean, I remember
Most of the cases they probably investigate are normal causes. Like, oh, there's the reason why you're hearing this banging is because you have some pipes in the attic that need to be worked on.
I remember this one segment off Unsolved Mysteries off the box set, and it was about a house that these three ranchers bought in the middle of this
Yeah, I remember that one.
yeah, and like when you slept in in the rooms, you heard just this banging and thrashing around, and when they would get up, everything was untouched. It was fine. And like they even invited their sisters out there, and they had the same experience, and all these weird psychological effects were happening to them, and noises and everything. And then finally they got some specialists out there, and they determined that, get this shit, they determined there was some lime rock under the house, and
Yeah.
and like water was seeping through, and it made some kind of a psychosomatic effect. It had some kind of effect on the brain to cause these kind of hallucinatory things.
I don't know.
That's what they were saying. So I mean, if you want to get that detailed into science, I mean, there are a lot of times causes for certain things, but in Ghost Boy, what ends up happening is pretty out of this world.
Yeah, Michael ends up he's drawing these terrifying hand-drawn pictures of what he believes to be the most dangerous and aggressive ghost that he's seen in the house, and this is the Shadow Man. And those pictures are definitely pretty eerie as well. And he even says that sometimes there's more than one Shadow Man that terrifies him and his family. This is kind of stuff that people with sleep paralysis see as well, as these kind of shadow people. So, but it doesn't seem like it's sleep paralysis because his family also sees these things. It's not just Michael who's seeing these things. And apparently, Michael had 26 different heart attacks when he was born, which is quite unusual. And somehow he managed to survive despite these cardiac arrests. And Zaffis believes that since birth, Michael has had the ability to communicate with spirits because this door to the other side has been open ever since he was born because of all of these different like near-death experiences that he's had when he was a baby because he had 26 different heart attacks. That's kind of plausible if you ask me.
Hey, hold on a second, Mike. I think there's something in here.
Really?
Oh, like a roach or something. Hold on.
All right. I thought you were saying like there's a shadow man in there.
Yeah, it's weird. I kept hearing like little legs or something, like the sound
Oh
of a roach,
God.
like the sound of a roach, like the little like scraping sound on my wall. I swear, I'm not trying to be like, I'm not trying to be apropos right now or anything. It's much more likely it's a roach. Trust me, they're very common in my house. But yeah, I just don't like those fuckers in my room because I mean, who would like that,
Fucking cockroach. But yeah, you scared me there. Like I was like, there's something in here.
Oh no. I thought I saw a I'm not again. I'm not. I thought I saw a little shadowy thing over by my clothes hamper, and I didn't know if it was either a rat or a roach. I hope it's a fucking roach and not a rat.
But anyway, so yeah, he had these when he was a kid. He had these 26 different heart attacks, and Zaffis believes that these were these led to near-death experiences that opened this door to the other side, to the paranormal. And I was saying earlier, I thought that was pretty plausible, considering he had all these different near-death experiences, one after another. So maybe there was some door that was left open because he had so many different heart attacks.
Yeah, it's like a near death experience, and you gain like yeah. He was basically saying that because he came so close to death, a door was opened for him to have that kind of paranormal sensitivity, a la The Sixth Sense, but it was more.
I see dead people. More like I see shadow people.
Yeah, it was more of an auditory. Well, not really. It was actually there was a visual component to the Ghost Boy thing too, but I mean, he didn't see actual like walking corpses or anything. It wasn't that dramatic, but no, I mean, it was kind of like he has this almost like this sixth sense that nobody would be envious of.
No. So Zaffis, he says he also believes the spirits are attracted to Michael because of the open door to the paranormal that Michael himself represents, and he fears that he could be possessed by one of these spirits, since he's going through what he calls the second stage of oppression. And then one night, Michael's parents hear a loud noise. It was like a loud thumping. Then they heard Michael scream. His parents then came into his bedroom and saw his bed shaking up and down. And Michael says he felt his bed rise about 3 inches. And then that makes my hair rise up about 3 inches. Like that particular, when I first saw that, that was the moment where I was like, oh, whoa, shit, like things are getting like Exorcist crazy. Beds jumping up and down.
As a viewer, that's the point where you're either where you're at a crossroads and you have to go either one of two ways. You have to either totally you have to totally call bullshit on it and be like, all right, now I know it's bullshit. Or that's when you get really, really scared and be like, holy shit, that like they actually saw this. This actually happened.
Yeah.
You're going to be one of two camps at that point because
Well, I think there
everything.
was multiple witnesses. There was the younger brother, the other brother or nephew or something was there with them. The mother, the father. I mean, they could have done this for like financial gain. I mean, there is a book about this case, so maybe, but I don't know. I doubt it.
You know what's funny? Like, there's so many people out there that like they're not going to believe this no matter what they say on the show because some people out there they just have to see it and until
Oh,
they
I know. There's certain people out there who think that there is some logical explanation for it, a scientific explanation for it. It's just we don't know what that scientific explanation is yet.
well they're not going to see it and they're not going to believe it until they see it and for me I'm the exact opposite. I believe it and I don't want to see it.
I don't want to see it either. I really don't. Especially not this. Yeah, this was yeah, Denise Jones, she wrote a book called The Other Side, the true story of the boy who sees ghosts. So there is a book about this particular case.
Wait, Denise the mom wrote it?
Yeah,
Oh yeah,
I know.
see
Yeah.
that
See,
does.
that seems kind of so this who knows? It still was a good segment though.
Well, one of the biggest parts about this that got to me was
She also saw she his mother says she saw the shadow man in her peripheral vision who walked across a wall. And the way that the Shadow Man looked like it reminded me exactly of this 80s Twilight Zone episode, the segment. It was called The Shadow Man. And it literally had the same sort of Shadow Man that showed up. And they said, you know, it lived under people's beds.
do you
And
think the like the set designers and all do you think they were paying homage to the Twilight Zone?
maybe, maybe, I don't know, but it was the exact same Shadow Man with the trench coat and the hat and everything. So that what it really started to escalate and go into like really scary territory because evil spirits started to physically attack Michael. They left scratches on his body and bite marks. And the family moved to another house, but that didn't stop any of this. And when Michael was just sitting with his family on the couch, a large scratch appeared on his arm right in front of his family.
Yeah, that was probably the scariest part to me. Like, and if you notice, like it's always like claw type
Yeah,
wounds with these things because there's a bunch of other segments that come to mind, and it's always like, and that's what makes it even scarier. It's like some kind of a demonic beast or something. It's
yeah,
like it's always claws or a claw like slash.
scratches. Yeah. In another paranormal show, Sightings, in the Heartland Ghost case, they were experiencing a lot of physical scratches and stuff like that. In fact, they actually got one of the scratches on tape. Now you could probably say it could be faked, but they sent the tapes in to people who test to see if things are faked, and they couldn't really find any evidence of fakery. So yeah, that was a pretty crazy case. And there was this ghost called Sally or something that just kept like tormenting this one guy, just scratching him and all kinds of stuff.
Yeah,
So
that reminds me of the Rain Boy segment too.
yeah,
There's the scene where he got scratched and it was like three claw marks on either side of his neck. Yeah, it's like a
yeah. So Denise decided to bring in an exorcist to exorcise any spirits that were attached to Michael. Michael says he saw the shadow man in the back of the church while this is going on, and he also experienced a burning sensation in his stomach that was eased with a drink of holy water. Now, it could just be you needed something to drink or something, or maybe just any water could have helped ease it. But holy water makes it seem like, okay, there might be something like that here. And I can't really say I've seen anything for sure, but I do remember, like, because we lived at this place that kind of run down. I lived with my dad and my stepmom in Oklahoma City. It's kind of run down house next to a church. And well, my stepbrother, not really my stepbrother, he's my uncle, step uncle kind of. His name was Tony. He has a lot of mental issues. He was going through a lot of stuff at that time, And I remember like just the house just didn't feel right when he was there. And I specifically remember one night where I was just sleeping. I was having a hard time sleeping, and like I felt like there was something behind me. And I remember just waking up like a jolt, and then looking around, and I swore I saw something behind the couch that I was sleeping on. The same sort of like dark, sort of shadowy sort of thing. And yeah, it definitely say it was hard to sleep for the rest of that night. Now that does kind of tie into sleep paralysis stuff, but I didn't really feel like the typical sleep paralysis symptoms. I didn't feel that type of, you can't move and so on. I literally remember actually being able to physically get up and then see something in the corner of my eye. So it could just be my mind playing tricks on me, but there was a lot of crazy shit going on in that location at the time, and I do believe in something called negative energy. So I do believe that there was a lot of that going on in the house at that point in time. Luckily, nothing got really bad. But even my dad and my stepmom said they saw some stuff too. So it wasn't like I was totally alone there.
Well,
And once
yeah.
he was gone, then the stuff kind of. We even actually had some pastor come in and bless the house, and some things, things got a little bit better. And when he left, things definitely got better as well.
Oh wow. Yeah, my friend who has schizophrenia, but she has it under control. She can recall all of her hallucinations and stuff perfectly, and she was telling me about how she would see auras around people, and like certain people would have like very like certain auras and all that. And I believe the mind of a schizophrenic is part insane, but it's also part extra extra
Extra sensory
extra
perception.
sensory
Yeah,
perception. Like I
yeah,
truly
ESP.
feel like they've accessed that part of their brain. Now they don't have any control over it, and that's the
Yeah.
problem. But they have access to it nonetheless, and she would actually see shadow people sometimes, like the kind of the stories. I could do a whole segment on the shit that she's told me about. But yeah, I mean, so there's more than what we see with the naked eye. I mean, if that weren't true, then you couldn't account for things like ultraviolet rays and radio frequencies.
Mhm.
There right now, all around us, there's all kinds of sonic frequencies from radio stations all around. We just can't see them. So I mean, the the fact that there could be energies from these things that we call ghosts is really not that far fetched if you think about it. I mean,
Yeah.
it doesn't even necessarily have to be some kind of a spiritual manifestation of someone who used to be living. It could be anything. It could just be a force of some
Yeah, it
kind.
could be just a negative entity.
Yeah.
So 3 weeks later, the disturbances continued for the Jones family, and since the first exorcism, Michael has undergone 4 exorcisms over the past few years, and his family has moved 8 times. And these things have provided some relief, but it is normally temporary. And Michael and his family are still dealing with these blood-curdling events straight out of our worst nightmares.
And that's what really pisses me off, because it's like, damn it, man. Like, what ended up happening to this kid? Like,
Yeah,
if I wanted to follow up on any case more than any of the other ones, it would
this
be
was
this
one
one.
of the newer cases too, I think. This is one of the last might have been one of the last few cases that was covered on Unsolved Mysteries, because it looks like a newer one, like maybe from like the late 90s, or definitely, or maybe I think it's the 2000s, I think, or something like that. You could tell because Robert Stack definitely did sound older with the narration here.
Yeah, so I mean, the kid. So if that's the case, then the kid's, maybe in his 20s now. If he's still alive, hopefully he is.
Yeah, the book came out in October of 2000, so it probably came out around the same time as the
Huh.
segment.
Yeah, I wonder if we could find the book, if there'd be some way to get, if we could somehow, I wonder if they have a website, or if there's some way, to.
It's on Amazon, and all the reviews are bad. Like everyone's saying, like it's terrible, it's not well written, just rips off The Sixth Sense and so on.
Oh wow.
Yeah,
Oh, that's fascinating.
I'm kind of still curious about the book, you know, because it's interesting that there is a book, but that it is written by the mother is kind of, it seemed kind of cash grabby. But how much money are you gonna get for something like this anyway? I mean, this isn't like back in the 70s where you had the Amityville Horror when you get a bestseller for this kind of stuff. You'd be lucky to make a little bit of a profit with these
Well,
type
the
of
thing
books.
that's kind of disturbing to me about it is the fact that she's talking about how, as a mother, I want to protect my son, and it hurts me so bad to see him in all this pain. Yet she's gonna exploit his pain for profit and
Yeah,
write a damn book.
yeah, that is a problem.
It's like that's gross, you know? Like,
That is.
what the fuck? It must not be hurting you that bad to put all the man hours into, writing a damn book and try.
It's 320 pages long, yeah. And then shit, the people are talking about this one guy's talking about how could anyone believe this stuff? He's talking about the book. He's like, I haven't read a couple books by Ed and Lorraine Warren. I was researching for someone's story, he wasn't lying and trying to make a buck. Even one of Warren's ghostwriters wrote an expose of how he lied his butt off while writing one of their books. So I started this book initially thinking, however badly written, these people have a true story about tell about experiencing demons. Wrong. After having to skip pages of boring details of how entities in Mrs. Jones's home were throwing her mother-in-law around, torturing her kids, and after the 1000th episode, her and her husband were still hesitant to contact anyone for help, I managed to make it to the end of the book. Here's where the mundane details became, yeah, give me a break type details. For instance, a large black car goes around mowing down several friends and family members, and then at the end of the book, this is actually kind of ridiculous, appears at her son's friend's grave and tries to mow the offer and her son down.
Oh my god.
Like it's the hearse. Then some sort of heavenly family members. Then some sort of heavenly light explosion occurs, and the car veering towards them at 1,000 miles an hour explodes into the universe. Okay.
Is now
Also, let's
is
get
this
the
book
book.
is this book billed as fiction or nonfiction?
I think it's kind of billed as nonfiction. So at the end of the book, she holds a seance for her and her son. At the seance, she sort of casually mentions she encounters the ghost of her grandfather and her son's dead friend, another victim of the demon car. None of this stuff was mentioned in Unsolved Mystery segment, by the way, folks. And she has an extremely lengthy conversation with both of them. They tell her son is likely a conduit for Satan and God, and got the impression the whole fate of the universe rests on this battle within her son.
Oh my god.
And one more thing, after having all these demon cars and angels and things flying around the house, beds floating around, and on, there's not one single piece of evidence in existence that shows any of this.
Okay, you know what? Now it just got ruined for me because this makes me feel like it's 120% bullshit because
Yeah,
I was before you told me all this stuff about a book and the mom writing it, I was thinking, okay, these are just nice people who are having a horrible thing happen to them, and Unsolved Mysteries felt it was a good story, so and there was a professional of this kind of shit involved,
yeah.
so maybe it gave it more credence. But you know what? The bottom line is there's not a single shred of proof that any of this shit happened. It's totally going off of what the mom is saying, even in the segment.
Uh-huh.
It's going off
Yeah.
of anecdotal evidence, and that's literally all they have. And now the mom's writing a book about it to that she could potentially make a lot of money off of. And how do you promote books? You make appearances on TV. I mean,
Uh-huh.
whether the book came first or after is inconsequential. I mean, the fact that she was on TV, if she wrote the book after she was on TV, she could say from the mother of the show Unsolved Mysteries, or from the segment on the popular show Lifetime show Unsolved Mysteries,
Uh-huh.
comes this book, and it's like, and now you're saying all this stuff about this car mowing people over. It's like, dude, fuck off. This is obviously a bunk case that the moms, they're just trying to make money and make a name for themselves. Because you know what? The more that I
She
think,
saw the 80s Twilight Zone segment, The Shadow Man,
well, the more
then
that I
thought of
think
that.
about it, the more it sounds like bullshit to me. Because it's like, you know what? If this kid was really tormented, if his bed was shaking and shit, why didn't they ever get any of it on video? Why didn't they
Why
ever?
would the kid, but the thing is, too, why would the kid draw these drawings unless maybe he didn't draw them, maybe his mom did, but they're saying like he drew these drawings under like psychiatric evaluations and stuff like this, so he could be coached to do that kind of thing.
Yeah, it
But
could
it's
totally be
why,
coached to
why
do
would
it.
it be that specific though? I mean, that's the thing. It maybe it did happen, but she like went way overboard with her book trying to get some bestseller, but at the same time,
But
it could also be
again,
a
I got
bunch
to
of
go back to the whole mother's pain, and
yeah.
it hurts me to see my son suffer. Yet you're gonna go and write a book about.
Resurrection Mary, there's people aren't writing books about Resurrection Mary. They're just talking about what they saw. With the Tallman House ghost, it doesn't seem like I don't think they wrote a book about it either. So yeah, I didn't know much about this book until I just did some research, in preparation for this talking about this segment. It's still a memorable segment and it's still creepy, but it might as well. It's just as probably just as plausible as a creepy pasta on the internet. It just because if you the book does raise a lot of suspicions, especially with the fucking demon car running over people and shit.
I mean, shit. At that point, you might as well be like, and there was like, and Ghost Rider was driving the demon car, and
And then you had like the battle over
then
her
Spider
son.
Man came out of nowhere and stopped,
The god,
and
devil, the god and the god and the devil are fighting over her son. The battle, the fate of the universe
fate of the
rests.
universe. Fate of the universe depends on this one little shit from wherever the fuck USA. Uh huh. Yeah. Okay.
It's
Now,
still fun to talk about this segment.
oh
I'm
yeah,
glad.
no, I mean, this is the first of this uncovering unsolved mysteries where I've been this some new information has been sprung on me and I've completely changed my opinion like on
Yeah,
like live as we're recording. Like I did not know any of that shit. That changes everything to me.
yeah.
I
Because
mean, y-
there's no witnesses. I mean, the husband says he saw stuff too, but he could just be in on
they
it.
could all be in on it. There's so much stuff missing from this one that was present in the other ones that
Yeah,
like the Texas UFO, you have separate witnesses, you have actual physical,
yeah.
that were reported by doctors. These people are dying essentially. I mean, there's so many things that are not present here.
Or even Rainbow, that's definitely more plausible
Oh
than
yeah,
this.
you had police officers who were, basically. And when you see these interviews from these police officers, you're like, yeah, they saw something that they couldn't
Yeah,
explain. But this is literally like this is all anecdotal evidence from this one family.
yeah.
And the psychiatrist or whoever, the
Well, there's
professional,
the parapsychologist guy too, but
but he literally said nothing was wrong.
no, he didn't. It didn't seem like he said like, "Oh, go see." He thought that there was some demonic. He thought there was a possibility of demonic possession. That's as close as it got. It seemed like with that guy. But it doesn't seem like he himself saw any of these things. Like the people who investigated the entity case and actually saw lights and stuff like that, and when the woman who was saying she was experiencing the supernatural, disturbances, like the spirit, like raping her and abusing her and so on, she's basically said she's had enough of this light show. Show yourself. And a lot of the actual people witnesses they said they saw like arms and legs materializing out of thin air. And these are multiple different witnesses, and you could probably say, oh, mass hypnosis, or be like that asshole psychiatrist from Poltergeist 3, who's all like, it was a mass hypnosis. She's just making everyone hallucinate that these things happen. Carol Ann from Poltergeist. But that's just that's stretching things that there'd be that many people who would go along with this at the mass hypnosis. Now this, and they have evidence because there's actual photographs that have been studied and by actual photography experts, and they can't seem to find anything wrong with them in terms of whether or not they're faked. This, yeah, it's anecdotal evidence. Could be might as well just be an urban legend.
Which honestly, the more that I think about it for Unsolved Mysteries, seems a little bizarre because usually they have more to go on. I mean, really, all they had is this Zaffis guy. I mean, that's
Yeah,
the only thing that kind of lended any kind of credibility for it.
that's why this seems like it was near the end of the show's run, like in the 2000s era. And it does kind of feel, it doesn't have the same feel as the other
No,
ones do,
no, it doesn't.
but it was still memorable for me when I first saw it. I just didn't know anything about this book. I remember hearing something about a book, but I didn't know anything about what was in the book until I did some more research. And Yeah, folks, it does sound like, the ghost boy, is got a bunch of ghost BS.
As
You
soon
know,
as people start grabbing for money, that or as soon as they start exploiting things that happen, that as soon as money gets involved with anything, it poisons it as far as I'm concerned.
yeah,
I mean, at that point, there's so much. I mean, I remember there was an Unsolved Mysteries segment where these two K Rock DJs had this segment
yeah,
called
yeah, that one.
yeah, they said, they talked about a little bonus fourth segment here. I'm going to talk about this week, but yeah, they these K Rock DJs in the '90s had people call in, confess their crimes, and they would be small things like I cheated on my girlfriend or whatever. And this one
Yeah,
guy called in, and he was very timid, and he basically admitted on air, reluctantly, that he got very upset at his girl when he walked in on her sleeping with some other guy, and he
shot her.
he said he shot her. Not he didn't actually go out and say he shot her. He said I got pretty mad and
Yeah, and I killed her.
I,
Yeah,
I don't know if she made it. And they're
yeah,
like, sir, are you saying that you killed this woman? Stay on the line so we can get you some help. And he's like, no, I think I should be going. And he hangs up the phone. And they have these DJs on Unsolved Mysteries, and they're trying to be like, hey, is this bullshit? Are you just making this up? Is this just a ploy to get ratings? And they interview the guy, and they're like, there's certain lines you don't cross as a DJ, and
yeah.
and making up something like this is just a line you don't cross. Making up someone's
Because
murder.
and they also tried to connect to another murder that was unsolved, and so you had the whole, the family members are having hope now that finally they can lay their family member to rest, and yeah, you find out that it was a radio publicity stunt.
Yeah, they were totally BSing. They even went on Unsolved Mysteries and lied and fabricated their story. And, Unsolved Mysteries being a transparent TV show, they even did an update and said, yeah, it turns out that the story was made up and the DJs were suspended, but eventually they not the they didn't press, the law enforcement didn't press charges, and I think they even got to keep their jobs.
Yeah, they got to keep their jobs. They were back on air like what, like a few weeks, it's a couple weeks after they got suspended.
Yeah, and when you
Yeah,
watch the segment, you're like, yeah, these guys are telling the truth. This guy called in a murder, and
yeah.
our good nature takes precedent usually, and at least mine does. And I'm like, hey, these guys are telling the truth. This is shitty, and
You definitely want to believe them.
yeah,
Yeah.
you want to believe that they're telling the truth, and no, they're full of shit, just trying to get ratings. This
The
mom,
other one, there's another one that's similar where this guy, he made a phone call, right? Didn't he make phone calls to like the press or to 911 or something? And he admitted that he did this crime or something like that. And there was this woman that had died in a shopping mall. She got murdered, and it was found like in a storage closet somewhere. Yeah, that was pretty crazy.
I don't think I've seen that one yet.
Yeah, that's on season three as well, I believe. The season three segments. So that one kind of ties into the whole thing where there's like videotape, audio tape, but they actually played some of the actual audio tape. So that is proof that okay, this really wasn't technically staged, but then it might be too. You don't know,
So
but it does seem.
our whole point is people can BS, and they can even go on Unsolved Mysteries and BS. And
Yeah,
now I know that there was a book for sale. And like I said, even if she wrote the book after the fact that she was on the show, doesn't make her any less of a bullshitter in my eyes, because she can still use the fact that she was on Unsolved Mysteries to move books. Because she can
yeah.
say, as seen on the popular show Unsolved Mysteries, the new book about Ghost Boy. And she brought, what's the name of the book, by the way?
The book is called "The Other Side: The True Story of the Boy Who Sees Ghosts."
Oh, I'm surprised the book wasn't just called Ghost Boy or something like in big bold letters.
The publisher even has this on the back. He says, from the Publishers Weekly, this is Michael's name is repeated again in a string of words that ran together that roughly read, "Michael, we're coming to get you. You know why." And then the number three in a roughly drawn eye with red drops dripping from it describes what terrified Jones saw on the day she realized all the paranormal events that occurred to up to now were part of a diabolical plan to harm her 10-year-old boy. Objects had been flying around rooms. Mysterious welts appeared on Michael's body. Her mother-in-law was mysteriously thrown down from the basement stairs, which none of that was mentioned the mother-in-law wasn't even mentioned in this segment, I don't think. Jones, her husband, and three children are ordinary Americans, practicing Catholics who keep to themselves and not too terribly sophisticated, despite Jones's clumsy writing. So that's just somebody talking about the book. And the publisher himself says this is a searing, suspenseful story of the supernatural in the tradition of the Sixth Sense and Poltergeist,
Oh my God.
but all the more chilling because it is true.
I'm
Might
just
as well, might as well have that whole thing on the book, like based on a true story.
yeah, like in the one of the blurbs or something. I'm just like grabbing onto that line. The mother-in-law was thrown down the stairs. That's hilarious to me because like how many people out there who don't like their mother-in-laws are just fantasizing about some apparition throwing them down the stairs. I bet Denise didn't like her mother-in-law, so she like just threw that extra detail in there. She's like, then the mother-in-law was thrown down the stairs because she should have lent me her car that one day. What a bitch. She pretty much deserved it. Good Lord. All right, do we have anything else on this?
Not really, not really, except it does sound like it's more than likely not true. The quote, the movie Amazon Women on the Moon, in the parody they did of Ripley's Believe It or Not, where Henry Silva says, bullshit, or not. I would probably say this is bullshit.
Yeah, this is a first for me on this podcast. I started in totally believing this and wanting to give it the benefit of the doubt, but this just goes to show you that we are transparent and we are open to things being bullshit. Me and Mike aren't just have the wool over our eyes, and our love of the show clouds our reason. I'm totally willing to call out when something's bullshit, so I think 2 out of the 3 segments on this one we sided with Johnny Law or the Skeptics or whatever you want to say. Yeah. So there you go.
Well, not really a 2 out of 3. Yeah, a little bit. You know, with the whole suicide thing, I could definitely see that with Cindy James could definitely be suicide, but then we don't really know I don't really know for sure exactly 100% which one it is, suicide or murder. But this one I definitely, I side with the Skeptics here. Because there's a lot to be skeptical about. The book about a demon car driving around.
Well, I mean, it's just like when someone that you really like if you're watching a game review on YouTube or something, and then you see in the corner of the screen sponsored by the company who developed the game. At that point, you're instantly like, okay, this is bullshit because there's money involved, and anytime there's money involved, it just taints the water for me. You know, the Tallman House ghost was such a great segment because the motherfucker was in silhouette. He didn't even want his name or face to be on camera. This bitch was all up in the camera, talking about this, that, and the other. And now I hear that she's got a book, and now I'm calling her a bitch. Look at me. I've become a horrible person now.
No, I think she's not really the best person either to exploit her son if that is, and even if it isn't true to exploit your son like that. I mean, that's pretty bullshit. That's pretty shitty. It's a pretty bitchy thing to do. So, yeah. Anyway, folks, thanks for listening. As always, I hope you guys enjoyed it. Stay tuned for more. We'll have 3 more cases for you. And maybe some of them will be bullshit.
They might start. We might start off believing, and we might end skeptics, or the other way around. You never know.
Yeah. You never know.
Make sure you subscribe to Mike on his YouTube channel for more content. This man does awesome reviews on movies. They're very compelling. He doesn't have to rely on a lot of the flashy animation and graphics. He just sits down and talks about movies, and he's so compelling that I found it interesting just listening to him talk, which I normally don't like that, but his it's good. He's got a lot of insight into movies. If you like random fun entertainment like video game reviews, me dressing up like a woman, taste testing British food, vlogging about my sad emo life, add me www.youtube.com/the Dancing with Ghosts 2. Man, I see you people are out there on SoundCloud and all the other, Stitcher and all, Podbean and all that. I see you guys listening, subscribe, and let's speak up, comment on whatever program you're using, and tell us what you think and what segments you want us to cover.
Exactly.
We'd like to hear from you.